In setting up for March in Project B, I'm truly taking it up a notch with this art style. I'm doing a vintage, ancient buildings, old Roman architecture inspired theme as per B's request, with tea-stained paper, burnt edges, and lots of gold paint. Hello friends, welcome back to a new video. If this is your first time here and you have no idea what Project B is or what I'm going on about, this is basically a custom bullet journal for my best friend. And I've documented the entire process, so I'll have a playlist linked for you to binge watch if you would like. Alrighty, let's start with the cover page. As you can see, I'm working on an external piece of paper rather than directly into the journal, and also as you can see, the paper has a yellow tint and there is ink already on the page, and I'll explain that in a second. So I will put the inspo images that B sent me on the screen, and as you can tell, they are very realistic. And back then, a few months ago, I did not have enough skill to translate this into a flat image in a notebook, and I was stuck on that for a while. I didn't know how I was gonna go about doing this theme. I thought about doing a collage, so I would print the images, but I also don't know how to do collages very well, so I was very hesitant. So I kept pushing it back and, procrastinate on doing the theme. Until I saw a video by Savannah Scribbles. She was doing something and it just inspired this entire idea in my head, which is she was making a bookshelf, I think, and she was like, I don't want to do all the math, and also I'm gonna obsess over the details and such, so I just went ahead and made it digitally and printed it. And I was like, I can do that as well, right? I don't know if you know this about me, but I usually trace whatever I'm drawing. I trace the basic shape so I don't have to obsess and overanalyze every millimeter of my sketch and then blame the skewedness and unsymmetricalness, if that's the word, of the end result. And also because sketching is not really where I find joy in drawing, rather I find joy in the painting and coloring and shading of the piece. But I knew that I couldn't go about this piece the same way that I usually trace, which I basically use one of two methods. I either use transfer paper and a Lightbox app on my iPad and transfer it that way, or I print the image and then use carbon paper to transfer it into the notebook or whatever surface I'm gonna work on. However, this cannot be possible for this piece because of the amount of detail that it has. So watching that video by Savannah Scribbles gave me a light bulb moment, and I was like, I can trace it digitally and then print that, and I would have the best of both worlds, I guess. So that is what I did. I imported the image into Procreate and then traced it with black brush, very simple, on a new layer so that I can remove the picture later, and just spent a couple of days on that. And honestly, I used like basic shapes, lines and curves and such, and squiggles, a lot of squiggles. And even when I went over that with a fine liner, you will see, if you look up really close, that it is a bunch of lines and scribbles and not actually sketching the actual shape of everything, if that makes sense. And that took a long time, by the way, but I got it done and it was actually really nice. I read recently a saying that says half of art is implying the existence of things. So, for example, you do not draw every strand of hair, you imply the flow of the hair, and then your brain fills in the gaps and sees the entire picture as you want it to appear. So maybe that is what is happening here. And so I printed that onto the tea-stained paper with lowered opacity so that I can go over it with a fine liner and it would look as if I've drawn it myself, even though I did not. And then I used a really pale Colors of the World Crayola marker to add color and shading to everything, but that wasn't enough, so I actually also used a gray marker to do the shadows and such, and to add that aged look to it. So I will put the image that I replicated for the cover page on the screen, and as you can see, it is already somewhat of a sketch, but still way too detailed for me to trace it in my traditional methods, I guess. So yeah. And once I was done, I actually burnt the edges of this page, but I did that off camera so that I wouldn't have to deal with the ashes on my desk and such. And then there is a space above the door, or I guess in the middle top. You can see it. I left it blank, and in there I did a vintage Old English lettering of the letter M for March, and I did that in gold. So all I have left to do is glue this into the notebook, and then I also bought these corner styles from Shein. These are stickers. So I put those, but they were matte. They weren't actually metallic, just the look of metallic. But I didn't really like that, so I went over that with a fine brush and gold acrylic paint. For the M that stands for March, I actually did it 3 times. First I did it with a black brush pen. I hated that. Then I went over it with a metallic gold gel pen, but I didn't like that either. So when I was going over the stickers with gold, I also went over that one with gold, and that fixed it and also gave it somewhat of a 3-dimensional look to it, which looks nice. And I've purposely spaced it so that the cover page for this theme and this month would be on a tan page. However, because this process took such a long time to trace it digitally, print it, retrace it with the fine liners, and add all the shading and details and such, it took me maybe a week per piece. So the other 2 pieces in this setup are gonna be prepared in advance, and we are not gonna actually see the drawing process. I think 1 was enough. Moving on to the calendar page, we are also working on a double tan spread, and we are starting with a big, very big calendar. It takes the entire page, honestly, and I've made it so 2 days of the week are on the left page and 5 days of the week are on the right page, because the big decorative drawing and element is going to be on that empty space besides the 2 days on the left page. And I did the calendar using a thin brush and gold acrylic paint. This is where I started figuring out that I can actually draw decent straight lines if they are short and I position the notebook and my hand well enough. So this calendar ended up looking really nice, except I, of course, had to accidentally touch some wet areas that I didn't know were still wet. So we have some smudges, but it's fine. The gold doesn't really pop on the tan paper, so sometimes you can't really tell where the calendar is, but it still looks beautiful when you shift the page and the light hits it directly. Then to letter all of the headers for each day of the week, I used this beautiful vintage English font. I'm gonna try to find it and put it on the screen, but I only did the first 3 letters because this font is complicated, and also I didn't have enough space, and also it just looks nice like that, and I only capitalized the first letter. And I did all of that using a black brush pen. I'm gonna link this one below because it is amazing, and I also used the same pen to go ahead and number the calendar. Here is the second large decorative art piece that I made. I'll put the image that I replicated on the screen. This is beautiful. However, I think I used 1 extra marker in this that gave it a slight orange tint, and I don't like that, but it also took such a long time that I wasn't willing to redo it, so I didn't. And as you can see, I have some clear music note PET tape that I'm layering underneath and just trying to see where it looks best before I actually stuck it down. I feel like music notes go hand in hand with anything Roman inspired, just like how scripts sometimes go so well with roses and birds. It's just a classic combination. So once I settled on where I wanted everything to look, I went ahead and stuck it down, and then as you can see I have a small piece of tea-stained paper that has been already, ripped and burned, and also has March lettered on it, and that will be a big, month title header that I will stick down at the bottom just to add something to the spread, because I felt like it was lacking something, and this was a fun way to add that something. And the art piece ended up covering parts of the header of Sunday and Monday, but I already knew that, so I wasn't bothered by it. Next is going to be the monthly dashboard, and as you can see we already have half of the spread done, and you saw how the final product is gonna look like. So I do love how this spread turned out. On its own it is beautiful, and I would be willing to do an entire theme on black paper that has the same style. However, I dislike it because it doesn't fit with the rest of the theme. It only fits in the idea, but nothing in the coloring or styling or such. So a common element in old architecture and Roman inspired architecture, these decorative columns and mantles and such. So I found one that was easy enough to trace. I'll put the image on the screen, and I just extended it so it would be long enough to actually have some writing space in the middle. I did something similar for myself back in May of 2024. I did like a Catholic window inspired theme, and I took one of the windows that I liked and then just extended them vertically so that I would have some writable areas. So that's what I did here, and then I use just gel pens and white gouache paint. I started with a very thin, quite faint gel pen. This is the Sarasa Clip white gel pen from the Milk set. I love this pen. It has such specific purposes, but it is a staple in my collection. I love it. So I did the outlines of all the details using that pen, and then once I was done, outlining everything, and believe me, I missed some of the details that I sketched down beforehand, because it's difficult to see my sketch on the black paper, and then also with filming and such, I improvised a little bit, so it definitely looks a little different than the right page where I was up close and personal with it and I was over analyzing every stroke. But once I was happy with the outlining, and I outlined the other column because repetition is boring, I went ahead with gouache and a really watery version to add shading and dimension. When I see architecture drawn on black paper, this tends to be the style that it is done on, or even on white paper. Most people will keep this white and just add shading with gray and such. So it looks really, really nice. It's just that because it doesn't really have the coloring of the other pages, or the other details, no burnt edges, no music note washi and such, it doesn't really fit that much. But again, on its own, I absolutely love how it turned out and love how realistic it looks. And again, lines and scribbles, and screw the details, don't look too close. As you can see, there is a circle that was kept blank, and that is where I'm gonna add the header. Mimicking what I did on the cover page, I just did the initial of each category. However, you don't see me add those headers on camera because I truly did need to be eye to eye with the paper. So yeah, I don't think I filmed it even. I don't have the footage for it. Now we are getting to the weeklies, and this is another thing that I struggled to conceptualize in my brain well. I wasn't sure how to translate the theme into a weekly layout. But as you can see, I definitely did. It is beautiful, and we already have half the spread done because it's the same thing, doubled, and yeah. I like to test the spreads before I start filming them, and also cut down the filming time and such, because you don't need to see me doing everything twice. So I was inspired by wall moldings, which is quite appropriate because this is like an interior architecture theme, right? Well, interior and exterior, maybe a mix of the two. Anyway, I found these beautiful moldings on Pinterest, and I, saved them for future reference, but then had the great idea to just make those into like a decorative piece of a frame. So this one that I have on the screen, I just replicated it on the two corners, and then the rest is just gonna be lines. And I measured it so that I would have 6 sections on each page for the first 2 weeks. So this one I did trace using carbon paper 24 times because I had to do each corner on its own. What I did is I took the image onto Word and then made the sections into the size that I wanted, laid them out into 6 rows, and then printed that so it would be easier to trace. And it definitely took a lot of time, and it took even more time to ink them. So I used my thin brush and gold acrylic paint on this marble coaster that I must mention, because how perfect, using marble to hold the paint while I'm doing architecture that was mostly done with marble. Is that factual? I don't know. Anyway, I did all the details with the acrylic paint, and I didn't use a lot of water. I actually built it up quite a bit so it would dry thick and have some texture to it. All that ended up doing is causing the pages to stick together somewhat and become tacky, but the end result, gorgeous, especially when you shift the page and the light hits it just right, gorgeous. But I don't have anything more to tell you about this spread, so let's just enjoy some classical music and the footage of me golding these frames. After I was done, I started putting in the headers for each day, and I used this Jashi Karen inspired font. I don't know if you have ever seen her handwriting, but it is absolutely gorgeous, and I really want to learn that style where you have the first letter, whether capital or small, very big, and then the rest of the letters are very, very small. And I tried to replicate that, and I succeeded on some days and absolutely failed and butchered the letters on some other days. But to put in the numbers, I actually ended up using black nail art number stickers using double digits, so that the first 8 days would start with 0, so 02 until 09. As for the next set of weeklies, I was also inspired by wall molding by the same brand, if I am not mistaken. I will put the image on the screen. And as you can see, we are doing the left page this time, but this time the spread is vertical. So I did 3 columns with moldings on the top and bottom, and then split the area in between right down the middle, so we would get 6 sections on each page. I did the molding detail with gold paint and took my time with it and enjoyed it. It was a really long process, but a fun one and a really rewarding one. The gold paint is gorgeous. I love this one. It's from FolkArt and I've had it for as long as I've been bullet journaling, since 2019, so it goes a long way. But I will definitely go and buy more and potentially get some in like a champagne gold and maybe also silver. To add in the headers, I used that same font with the enlarged first letter, but this time wrote the actual entire word for each day. So Sunday instead of just SUN or sun. And then also used the nail art number stickers to add the numbers for each day. Here again, we have 6 sections, so a joined weekend. So I just put the numbers one after the other. We are moving to the monthly review, starting with the art. As you can see, we have some paper pieces on the side, but for now we will focus on this very big frame. And this is inspired by ceiling moldings and architect. I'll put some images. They're absolutely gorgeous, and I thought I could replicate something, also add a different shape of the big oval, which is actually tied into the theme, because the sections on the monthly review were oval also. Tiny detail, but ties it in so it's not so out of place. I found this image of half a frame, and I was at first gonna go with that and just replicate it to get like an entire oval, but I still felt like the oval wasn't big enough to actually have writable things in it. So it led me to another image, which I'm gonna put on the screen, and I decided to go with that one instead. I thought it was more decorative and I liked it better. So, and it also had the larger area in the middle. I was gonna do individual lines on that big border around the oval, but I did not end up being able to do that. It was not gonna look good, so I did my best to capture the details, but in the end I go with those corner frame moldings, I guess stickers of moldings, and I cut them up and taped them in to make it look good, and then went over them with the gold paint to make them shimmery, but also to tie them together because some of them had different tones and such. And that definitely saved it, because up until that moment I did not like what I was doing with the monthly review section. I do apologize for the constant flickering in the lighting. I did not notice until this moment, and I don't know why that keeps happening. But every time I take my hand off to get more paint on the brush, the lighting flickers from warm to cool. It is probably because of the white paper that tends to happen whenever I film something and the paper I'm working on is white, which is one of the reasons why it is my least preferred background color. And then one of the pieces of paper that was on the other side is this really big tea-stained oval that has burnt edges. This is where the writing is gonna be, which tones the page down a little bit and adds some neutrality to it, because the white paper is really stark and it needed that neutralizing factor, which we previously had with the gray paper or the tan paper. So adding this really brought it together, because it wasn't really looking all too good with just the white paper. So we have that, and I had already traced March in that same font that I used on the monthly calendar, and used a calligraphy brush pen to letter that in or fill it in. And this month, instead of giving her just general headings, where she can write whatever she wants, I decided to put prompts. And I felt like that utilized the space better and also switched it up a little bit. So we have favorite moments from this month, what has drained my energy this month, what big challenges did I overcome this month, and how has my spending been this month. On the other page, I decided to add a decorative quote page, I guess. We have this beautiful replication of the interior architectural piece. I will put it on the screen. It is beautiful, and I cannot believe that I somehow was able to replicate it on paper, albeit a lot less detailed and a lot less neat, but gives the illusion. Okay, there's a lot of mistakes if you look up close, but don't look up close. Anyway, I did that, and I did end up adding gold to this piece, and as you can see, there's slight differences piece to piece. So this one has the gold, the one on the calendar has that warm tone, and then the one on the cover page has neither. But that's what I did, and then I used a piece of the leftover tea-stained paper, crumbled that to give it a little bit of texture, and then added some music note PET tape and used some quotes that I got from that PET tape that I thought somewhat fit the vibe. I don't think they make sense, but they look nice and they fit the space that I needed them to. And then I just added one of those corners that I used on the cover page here as well, and added some sheen to it with the gold paint. We have reached the end of the setup of March in Project B. I hope you like it as much as I do. I love it. I'm just glad that I was able to do this theme at some capacity, and I think it looks spectacular. I think I now understand why everybody in the bullet journaling community loves a good vintage theme. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and also which aspect of this theme was your favorite, and leave a related emoji down in the comments to let me know you got till the end, and subscribe because we have great themes coming. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.